I believe on this, on cultures and value, that if you love this firm and your partners, that you would take the responsibility to dig this well. Let me tell you why I think it matters. You see, what happens is, what the reality is that we have a lot of specificity when it comes to behaviors. To-do list, expectations, metrics, measurements, expectations in relationships. I clearly understand, growing up in this profession, how much pressure there sits on the partnership, how much pressure there sits on every individual partner. And all of that shows up in how much work we do on the bucket of behaviors. And organizations have spent millions of dollars in behavioral modification, and I would suggest it really hasn't necessarily gotten us that far. I'm not saying any of that is bad. I think all of it's good. The question is, what is it fueled by? But on the other end of the equation, on this value side, there isn't a lot of specificity. There's a gut feel and intuition, values-based, but there's not specificity. And what begins to happen is the continuum begins to move in the wrong direction, because what happens is the behaviors begin to fuel everything, and our wants and our needs get all intermingled. And we start needing what we want rather than wanting what we need. And as we continue to drift, those needs turn into demands, and those demands turn into entitlement. It's where ambition turns into greed. It is where achieving turns into winning at all cost. And let's be clear. Every single one of us in this room is vulnerable to this reverse flow. All I'm suggesting is the list that you began this morning, in the next 30 days, to try to begin to flush that out to your version 1.0 of your core values, personally. Because what would begin to happen is you begin to do that and begin to get clarity and begin to get specificity on the values end of the equation, you reverse the flow. And when you're living in a world of disruption, and I don't know about you, but as I was sitting there yesterday listening to those speakers, it's a little mind-spinning. And again, I would agree with Scott that he said that, we're in slow motion compared to what's ahead. But I'm going to tell you that it really doesn't matter how fast things go if you are integrated internally and collectively. It's like being in the eye of the storm of a hurricane. There's great peace in the middle of that storm. But the question is, are you willing as a partner to take ownership for your internal core? And what begins to happen, and I want to be clear that all four of these buckets are really important. Every single one of them. And if you don't think, if all of a sudden you start thinking, well, the values bucket's more important than the others, what happens is any good idea, anything that really you're passionate about and have emotion about, you're going to dump it in the values bucket. And that's a problem. Values are values, and needs are needs, and wants are wants, and behaviors are behaviors. The question is, which direction is it flowing? Because what happens is, if your values are clear, then your needs become very clear based on those set of values. And then your wants are just pouring out of the needs, and they're wonderful. And your behaviors become far more efficient, far more effective. You make better decisions. You bring what this partnership claims that it is. And what does this have to do in an organization? Because it sounds very personal. And some people would say, well, John, personal values are personal. And I would agree with that. But I will tell you, in an organization, and specifically in a partnership, that personal values are not just personal. They're systemic. And every single one of you in here is dependent on every single other one of you in here when it comes to the personal values that you show up with. And by the way, whether you know them or not, you bring them with you. But imagine what we do is we begin to know them, an amazing thing begins to happen. You see, what begins to happen is the more that we are aware and specific within ourselves, the more interested we become in the values of the people around us. Not to judge them, but to know them and understand them. And then, and I would suggest only then, that the 7 stated values of KPMG all of a sudden begin to mean something. It isn't just a matter of listing them, it's a matter of getting to know them, and it's a matter of getting to know them through the values in your own core. And if you dig your well, I will guarantee you that when you look through the filter of your personal values at the 7 stated organizational values of KPMG, you will see them like you've never seen them before. You will know them like you've never known them before. And I would say you will live them like you have never lived them before. But the question first, are you willing to dig the well? And then once you know the well, once you've intersected them into the KPMG values, and let's me speak clear of this, in a shared community, there is responsibility to the community's values. This is not about, this is my values and I'm showing up and I get to call it my way. No, it's looking through the filter of your values to the responsibility of the organization, the shared community's values, the partnership's values.